All right. Welcome to the show. And I hope to keep it a show. I really do. I hope to, entertain you as well as inform you. And my real goal here is to reestablish wonder in the world. I think that what has happened with us is we've become very rigid in our belief systems. We've been very locked in our logical, rational, reasonable minds. And we're not thinking outside of the box. And as long as we stay in the box, we're going to just keep traveling down the path of destruction that we're on. Some of this talk is going to be amazing, interesting, and weird. And when you start to realize that, say, with Nostradamus' predictions, and you start to realize, well, Saddam Hussein was the Antichrist, or George W. Bush was the Antichrist, why is it that we're all continually waiting for the end of the world? This has been something that I've been trying to understand, and trying to get a grip of the agenda that's going on that's propelling this type of mindset forward. Because all my travels and everywhere I go, all I run across are good human beings that love one another, want to take care of the planet, want to grow a garden, enjoy one another, create things, and just have a good time. I don't meet humans that want to subjugate me, stick me in a jail cell, put me in unless they're wearing a uniform and part of this authoritative agenda. And so it's always my question, well, if we've got 6 billion good people and about 30 bad, why is it that we're all following them? And I found that what has happened is our true divine nature has been usurped by magicians. I call them sorcerers because it's a more proper term for the black magic being used. When you start to tell people about the occult nature of the government, the nature of magic that they're dealing with, then all of a sudden magic gets thrown into this area of evil, and then everybody's turned to the Bible. And I don't want to do that either. I don't want to say one's good, one's bad. What I'm saying is that these guys are using a tool, a device, a method of science that we don't yet understand, but they do. And they want to turn it around and use it for their own forces. And so as an example, instead of you supplying your own divine future, you now seek a dollar bill. And the dollar bill is a magical pantacle. If you look at any seal of Solomon, any ancient book grimoire of magic, you're going to see 2 seals combined with a binding agent. And so on the dollar bill, you of course got the eye in the pyramid with the phoenix, and it's 13s, and then the 1 in the middle. And this is the reason the dollar bill has never changed, as they changed all the other bills along the way. They never once changed the dollar. And that's because it's their main pantacle, their main talisman. It has all their magical sigils on it. It's their symbol of power. And so this very power then has usurped our divine nature. So instead of seeking a miracle in your life, you believe the miracle comes from the money. And then this gives you the belief that you now control your future because you can pay to have what you want. You can say, I'm going to do this in the future because I have this pantacle, I have this talisman, I can do what I want. And that really is a Luciferian belief system. And it's a false system because it doesn't exist. It's all controlled by these guys, the magicians, the money masters, those that have crafted money out of nothing. And this entire fiat currency comes straight from the Templars, and that's where we started to get into the gold for paper idea. So this magical pantacle now has just usurped your very divine nature, and instead of having a miracle come into your life, and you go, oh my God, I can't believe this was just as wonderful as it is, and I'm getting everything I need, and I didn't have to do anything for it but me. Now you have to go and get a job under the golden arches, or under the sun sign, or under the pentagram, or whatever sigil they want to put on their magical logo, and you have to work for this magical symbol, which is a talisman. And so once we start to realize who's in charge of our planet, that's the big thing that people miss. We think that the civilization is the outcome of human endeavor, that this is just the way life would have turned out had we been left to our own devices. But I've always had this question. Why are we mining gold? What is gold? And why is it so important to planet Earth? Why is it that God says, go kill them and take their gold? I don't understand this. What do we need this rock for? And once you start to understand that our ancient past is actually far more technologically advanced than we have been told, then you start to understand why gold is important. Because it's important today for technology. And once you start to understand levels of gold and monoatomic gold and hyperdimensionalities, then you realize, oh, gold is like the spice of doom. Gold has the ability to fold space-time, and we can travel from star to star with gold. And that's when you start to get into interesting, curious questions. And that's what I'm hoping to show you some of today. And leave you astounded. At 10 years old, I drew a picture. And I had no idea what I was drawing when I was 10. This was 1976, right before Star Wars came out. Or else these would have been X-Wing fighters. I saw Star Wars 14 times in the theater. I always wanted to be a spaceman, all right, so just keep that in mind. But I drew this picture at 10, and I knew nothing, and I don't know why I still have it. I have lost everything I owned throughout my entire life, but I have this picture. I don't know why. And as I drew all of these space shuttles on here, and I actually won the school art contest that this was for. And as I drew each of these space shuttles, I felt they needed a symbol. They needed a symbol of some sort, and I didn't know what I wanted. I wanted something cool, though. I'd already drawn flames and everything else down the space shuttle. I wanted to put something cool on there. And my hand came up with this. Just a little curved line with a straight line running through it. And I thought, well, all right, that's not as cool as I was hoping, but I went ahead and I put it on each of the space shuttles. All right, now our space shuttle titles are the Columbia Endeavor for the discovery of Atlantis. All right, Challengers were destroyed. Enterprise was an added addition, but Columbia Endeavor for the discovery of Atlantis is our space shuttle missions. If you recognize who NASA is and recognize that they come from a Freemasonic line that goes back to the Nazis. It was the Nazi scientists that came over and gave us rockets. And then you couple that with Jet Propulsion's laboratories, and you've got the occult, because JPL is started by Jack Parsons, who was a member of the Ordo Templi Orientis, connected with Aleister Crowley, and all of this comes back to the occult. And our space program is run by the occult. Then I drew this winged serpent. I had no idea, and I'm still asking about this one, but I've got some answers now. And this is what I thought was a spiral galaxy. That's what I thought it was. Okay, so 18 years later, I'm moving on 30, and this starts to come to life. All of a sudden, this artwork starts to make sense. I come across a little book known as The Sirius Mystery. And this book was written by Robert Temple. And after he wrote this, the Temple of the 33rd, the Supreme Mother Council of the World of the Freemasons, started pestering him to join, because he had secrets in here about the Masonic religion that they themselves had never heard. They're like, get this guy in here. Well, this book's all about a bunch of fish people that came down and talked to an African tribe from a star known as Sirius. And the fish people that came, they gave the Dogon a symbol. So they go and they interview the Dogon, these men in Africa, and Mali, Africa. And they tell them the story of a race of beings that came from a star known as Sirius. It's a binary star system that we only discovered in the 70s. Or we've only got a picture of in the 70s. We discovered it beforehand, but we couldn't see it. But yet these Dogon knew everything about Sirius. They knew the orbit of its binary star was 50 years. They knew all these astronomical data about the star that we couldn't see. And they don't have telescopes. And so they were like, well, how do you know this? And they said, well, the repulsive abomination came up out of the water and told us all about it. And they're like, a repulsive abomination? What was that? Oh, our God. The one who brought us our religion, all of our secret mysteries, the fish people that would come and tell us about it. Later, these fish people became known as Dagon. And you will find Dagon as the fish people, Oans, and a number of other fish deities in the Bible. Well, the Dogon were given a symbol by the fish people for the star Sirius. It just happened to be the exact same symbol that I drew on my space shuttles. Now, it was curious to me because what I had found was that the Masons worshiped Sirius. The Egyptians worshiped Sirius. The Mayans worshiped Sirius. Everybody's worshiping Sirius. Why? This was very strange. Now, just to give you an example, if you go downtown, or right across the street, you'll see the clock tower, right? And due north of the clock tower is the Capitol Dome, right? And standing on top of the Capitol Dome is a goddess holding a pentagram. You're all aware of this, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so the Egyptian hieroglyph for Sirius is an obelisk, a dome, and a pentagram. And guess who represents Sirius? Isis. So that is the goddess standing there holding the pentagram. So we have a life-size hieroglyph to Sirius as our capitals in every nation. And then, or every state, my bad. And then, standing in front of this clock tower across the street, you will find our goddess Columbia hanging out with the fish people. So they're the merfolk that are there pulling Columbia, our goddess, forth on a boat. And then on one side she has a pentagram, on another she has a shell. These are symbols of Lucifer, Venus. Venus is Lucifer. The symbol for Starbucks coffee is, of course, the fish goddess with her fins up above her head. That's so it could have sex with the fish people. And that's how this whole story rolled. So I began to come into an understanding that there was more to planet Earth than I thought. That there might just be an ancient relationship with extraterrestrials from a constellation or from the dog star Sirius. And that the Freemasons that were running our planet were worshipping this. And that they seemed to be mining the planet for this race of beings from Sirius. So I took this hypothesis and I started to roll with it. I learned that my dad was a worshipful master for the Berlin Lodge that chased flying saucers in Project Blue Book, was on Killer One submarine with Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter did what?
My father and Jimmy Carter were on Killer One together, the first killer nuclear sub. And this is the type of things that you do when you're a Freemason. If you're a Freemason, then you're in the intelligence agency, you're in the space agency. All the astronauts have been Masons. You go to, you're in the secret order, and therefore then you get to be the one that chases flying saucers like my dad. So now I'm starting to take the puzzle a little bit more serious. You know, my dad's involved. I'm like, oh my God. And I did not know this as I'm tracking UFOs and ancient civilizations and everything else. I didn't know my dad was involved. And then as I start to talk about it, my dad's like, well, yeah, flying saucers are real. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I was in Project Blue Book chasing flying saucers for the government. Oh, all right. Didn't know.
He worked with Heimlich?
Yes. Yeah. He's actually in a book called Architects of the Underworld, mentions my dad. I don't know. So I find this stuff out, but he never tells me anything. But as you see, he was worshipful master. This is all their garb that they wear in the temple when they go and they do their secret rituals. So your leaders are going into these buildings, into these temples, and doing secret rituals. So I began to understand their ritual. I started to look deeper and deeper into this, and I realized that it was Kabbalism. And Kabbalism came from an ancient Hebrew mysticism that was based out of Egypt. And Kabbalism is the magic that Britney practices and Madonna practices, and Madonna's about to have another Kabbalist wedding, and Demi Moore had a Kabbalist wedding with Ashton Kutcher. Kabbalism is far more popular than most people would think, and it's actually Hebrew mysticism. So everything that you decipher in this magic has to go back to Hebrew. And so I started to decipher these ideas. And what I did is I started to watch Y2K. And in Y2K, they were, of course, talking about the big meltdown, the computer meltdown. And we're going to have to fix everything, right? And, of course, they charged $10 a line, and the DOD alone had 358 million lines of code to go through. So think about how much money the government made off of Y2K. Not only that, but they established Command Central. They built a deep underground military base to route all resources through in case of a terrorist attack or any earth-shattering event, which didn't seem to come into play when 9/11 happened. Because even though Command Central was a deep underground military base they built for Y2K, the stock market was going to be routed through there as well, but for some reason after 9/11 they told us that the stock market was shut down for 3 days. I'm thinking another Rothschild coup? I don't know. But I wasn't curious, I wasn't too concerned, I wouldn't have minded at all if the entire system had shut down on stroke of midnight on Y2K. That would have made my day. I'm ready for the end of this madness. But what I was concerned about was the headline that was in the USA Today. And that said, Muslims stop the Freemasons from capping the Great Pyramid with gold. What? What? So I began looking into this, and sure enough, and not only is it strange enough that the Freemasons were going to cap the Great Pyramid with gold with a giant gold cap held by a helicopter, while Jean-Michel Jarre played the 12 Dreams of the Sun, and they projected the Eye of Horus onto the pyramid. But there was an entire ritual going on from one nation to the next, all in honor to this god Horus. And I watched as this entire celebration went down, And what happened was, just prior to the capping of the Great Pyramid with gold, there was an Egyptian flight leaving out of Los Angeles. And it was Egyptian Flight 990, but it was also known as Thothmosis III, who some believe is Moses. It had the Eye of Horus on the jet, and the jet decided to pull over and stop at an American military base. I think it was Patterson or Edwards. I always lose those two because they're both involved with extraterrestrials. So this airliner, which is a foreign airliner, landed at a military base, which has never happened before and never happened again. And they picked up 33 Egyptian military and a head scientist of Jet Propulsion's laboratories, and they took off for New York to then take off to the Giza Plateau. All of a sudden, this plane took a sudden nosedive into the ocean on its way to the Giza Plateau. The pilot called out a prayer as it went down. It seems that they have remote control over our jet liners, because if you remember Paul Wellstone suddenly flying into a mountain after going against the Patriot Act, you get an idea of how they can do these things. But this was the first one. This was the first time this had happened, and the first one that we had noticed. And it was so symbolic, and it also involved the capping of the Great Pyramid with gold with these high scientists with Jet Propulsion's laboratory. And when the pilot called out his Muslim prayer and crashed into the ocean, then they called it pilot suicide, because they weren't ready for the programming of terrorism yet. So it was just strictly classified as pilot suicide. Don't know what happened. But next thing you know, they canceled the Great Pyramid capping. But you can watch the entire Y2K ritual in this film, because I was recording it at the time. Everybody thought I'd be in a deep underground bunker, since I suggested that the FEMA and DOD said you should have 3 days of food. Everybody thought I was a nut. But I filmed it, and I recorded the whole event, and the entire ritual is in here, showing you how all of the nations across the world coming into America, they ignited the Eiffel Tower, which is a Masonic phallus. They ignited the Washington Monument, which was shown to have the Dogon symbols on it. And then Bill Clinton came out and said it is a rising sun. And these are all code within their Atlantean, Hebrew, Egyptian rituals that they're performing. So I took this knowledge, and I want to share this with you, because I want you to see how I came to my ideas, understandings, because I keep making these predictions and I keep getting them right. And I don't know why, I don't know what's going down, but this is what keeps happening. So after Y2K, when I was watching Bill Clinton prior to Y2K with the Monica Lewinsky scandal, and I said, why are they doing this? Okay, they're bringing our president out in front of everyone and making him turn purple by bringing up cigars being inserted into his secretary, right? And he's just like, oh, can I have another bathroom break? You know, poor guy, right? But I knew it was a plan. I knew it was psychological warfare. This was their game plan to start to discredit and disgruntle the Americans. The whole idea is to defeat your heart before they can defeat you in warfare. So as I'm watching this, I know that I know JFK was together with Marilyn Monroe, who happens to be a cousin of George Bush. I know that, the other presidents have all had their mistresses, and I know that they don't promote this, but unless they had a reason. So my reasoning was that these men were now lowering our ideal of the man, the president. So they were going to take Bill Clinton down, and in that way, they had put a man of the people, the saxophone player, David Letterman-loving man of the people, into office, and then crushed him for an idea that most people would say, so what? Okay, but this was to defeat your heart. They're preparing you for World War III. So I'm knowing this. I'm saying, okay, this is what's going on. So what's the next step in the process? What would they do? And I look and I say, okay, well, obviously, if you want to defeat their hearts, the next thing to do is to force a president into office. The next thing you would want to do is to, take the system down so that no one believes in the system anymore. So I said, all right, they're going to force a president into office. And then I hear the call of this W. I knew the meaning of W. I had just recently found the meaning of W because I was trying to understand corporate logos. I had been through all the gas stations. I understood the pentagram of Texaco, the shell of shell, as symbols of Venus or Lucifer. I knew that Target's sun sign was a sexual symbol. I knew that Walmart's pentagram were all connected. But what did Phillips 66 mean? I didn't get that. But very simply, I just went to a magician's dictionary, opened it up, and said, what's number 66 mean? And it's the number of the Quillapoth in magic. The number of the dark side of magic. It was the number of evil. And in Hebrew, V is 6. And so very quickly I transliterated 66 into VV. And this totally opened up a whole new ball of worms, because next bag of worms are can of worms or any of that, because all of a sudden I'm looking at Hitler's cars, the Volkswagen. The Volkswagen was crafted for Hitler's warfare. And I'm realizing that that's not V and W, that's two V's interlaced. Well, when you take 6 and 6, and you put 6 and 6 together and cross them, you get 666. So all of a sudden, Volkswagen means 666. And then I happened to notice that the Philips logo actually had 6 points on its crest. Another coded 666. So as I saw this coming down the pike, and I heard the story of this W, I said he's going to be the one. They're going to force W into office. Because he's the magic. He's the dark one. He's the evil one that's going to bring down this whole idea of America. I was right. And they did force him into office just as I had expected. So at this point, I'm like, oh, God, what do I know? You know, what do I know? All throughout the Clinton era, we were watching this thing known as the Homeland Security Act. And that's what we called it. They were trying to create a Homeland Security in America. And, of course, all the patriots were up in their arms about it. But this came up to bill every October, in the beginning of October, every year during the Clinton era. Every year, it was shut down. Every year, they were like, hell no, that's the most unconstitutional bill I've ever heard of. So, in this way, I knew that they were going to need a reason. They were obviously going to need a reason to force this thing into action. Every time it came up, they shut it down. So when they railroaded the W into office, that was when I knew. Now, if you know the story of Dune, then you'll understand our story a little more, because Bush is like the evil emperor's son, and Obama as the good emperor's son. You know, he was here to soften us all up, and now Obama's coming to save us. So when the W was railroaded into office, I said, there's going to be a major terrorist attack to forward this Homeland Security bill. And I knew that it would take about 2 weeks of people's reaction time for the event. So I said in the middle of September there's going to be a major terrorist attack in 2001. I had been talking about it for a number of years because I expected it all during the Clinton era. But when the W was forced into office, I knew that would be it. So I went, and just like a group of people like you, and I said, hey, there's going to be a major terrorist attack on 9/11, and I chose that date because that was the date HW announced the New World Order for the first time publicly. And I know how ritual these people are. So I chose that date just basically random, but knowing that there was a purpose to it, and saying, okay, on 9/11 there's going to be a major terrorist attack. Don't freak out. This is for your reaction. Those were my words. And when it happened, I actually had a whole line of people at my door going, how did you know? And I'm like, I don't know how I know. I'm just following the script that I believe, that I understand. And so I'm coming to give you the rest of this story because I followed that prediction up with, well, W will be the last American president. Now, one thing I want to get over to you is how miraculous the story has been. And I think it's in the miracles of how this all falls together that makes it really the true story. Because if I were just giving you this data and facts and everything and saying, well, this is just the science that I've been figuring out, it's not. I have not gone looking for any of this information. It keeps coming and finding me, and I feel like I am required to share it with you. Because when I had the 9/11 prediction, I didn't tell anyone. I told people at a party, you know. And I think I might have been able to change the world if I had said something. So I have new predictions for you, and I've continued with my predictions, and I have not been wrong yet. My latest one was public. It was on 10/13. And I decided to make this one public just to test my hypothesis and make it all public. No one seemed to notice. So I, for 2 years, went around talking about 10/13 and explaining the significance of this to the Templars. And then on 10/13, as I predicted, I never know what's going to happen. And that's where I hope people will take my knowledge and apply it to a more real-world scenario. Because I didn't know they were going to hit the Twin Towers. I just knew they needed a terrorist attack and that they'd do it on this day. 10/13, I could have put together, I could have realized that 10/13 is the day the Templars were all killed. In 1307, Pope Clement and King Philip came together and said, let's kill off these Templars. They're too rich and powerful. And it was on 10/13 that they killed the Templars. So this is a ritual date for the Templars, and the Templars are the prefab of the Freemasons that are ruling our nation today. So I used their dates to make my predictions because I'm watching them. And it wasn't simply that 1013 was just there. If you notice, the Pentagon's cornerstone was dated to 9/11, 1941. It just happened to be hit on 9/11, 2001. And I did have data showing that the Twin Towers cornerstone, which was Masonically laid in both cases, also was dated to 9/11. And actually just realized that Captain William Morgan, who exposed the Freemasons for the first time and was ritually murdered back in the 1700s, was also killed on 9/11. Just a curious little connection there. So when I looked at these things, I was saying, okay, here's the date, here's the ritual date. And if I had taken it one step further and recognized the Templar connection with the fiat currency, I could have given you a fuller projection of what was going to happen. And sure enough, on 10/13, that was the day when Bernanke and Paulson pulled all the 9 CEOs of all the banks together and said, you've got to sign these documents, signing over all your assets, and that's when the finances collapsed. And their headline in the Austin Chronicle, of all places, says, 1013 bigger than 9/11. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I've been saying this for 2 years now, you know. I was on talking with the High Priest Church of Satan, 1013. You can watch all that on freemantv.com. I have all of this stuff live on my websites, freemantv.com or the freemanperspective.blogspot.com, and you can watch me talking about all of this. So I start with this man. And I start to understand that, there is a list. There's a list of enemies that we're going to have to deal with. And the first was the Red Scare. And this list comes from a Nazi that came over and joined NASA. And just happened to be hanging out with Walt Disney. If you know who Walt Disney is, man, you'll start to get a good clue as to what's going on. Werner von Braun was a Nazi scientist brought over here to help NASA get into space. He came out and said, look, the extraterrestrials are malevolent. The governments are trying to have a war with the extraterrestrials that are trying to visit us. Do not allow them to weaponize space. And he started the Space Preservation Treaty, which Denis Kucinich is a champion of. And they're like, keep the weapons out of space. This is the whole thing. So he says, all right, what's going to happen is they're going to hit you with the Red Scare, the Cold War, and that's going to start the whole agenda of the technological advancements into space war. Then they're going to hit you with terrorism, which is what came next. But most people believe that the next part of the program is extraterrestrials. But that's not what Werner von Braun said. He said the next step is asteroids. And so I took this data and I watched as just currently Obama decides to couple the DoD with NASA. And this is exactly what Werner von Braun was talking about. So what they're doing now is coupling NASA with the DoD. They're going to retire the space shuttles. The shuttle Atlantis just launched last May 11th. And the Endeavour is waiting to launch just in case the Atlantis has problems. They're going up to the Hubble Space Shuttle or Space Telescope and hoping to repair it. They're having 5 spacewalks in order to try and repair or get these new cameras, because there will not be any more space shuttles. They are retiring the Columbia Endeavour for the discovery of Atlantis. Maybe they already discovered Atlantis. I don't know. So just as Werner von Braun had been predicting, he was started the very first thing Obama did when he came into presidency was saying, oh, okay, we're going to couple the DoD with NASA, and we're going to start what's known as the Ares space program. And if you know Ares as the god Mars, which is the god of war, we're going into a warfare space program. And this is what they were talking about. Well, so just last week, they tried to launch the Minotaur out of Virginia. Now, who knew we could launch rockets from Virginia? I didn't. There's actually only been 2 launches, and both of them were Minotaurs as well. And what they were launching are these TechSat-3 satellites and these special cubes, sat cubes, CubeSats. So there's going to be 5 satellites that were supposed to be launched last week, but they kept having problems with the weather, and then they needed the Virginia site to launch the Atlantis, so this whole rocket was scrubbed. But they will be launching this Minotaur space-based weaponry out of Virginia sometime soon. The question comes, who is Barack Obama? Who is this guy? His name doesn't even seem to be Barack Obama, but Barry Soetoro. He was asked to supply his identification, anything any one of us has to do at all times. And he couldn't do it. He supplied a faulty birth certificate without a seal, without any notification, without anything necessary on it. And so there you go.
Heard the rumors about Barack Obama's citizenship? These are the facts. The Constitution requires the president to be a natural-born citizen. Obama's grandmother said she was there when Barack was born in Kenya. Obama refuses to release his original birth certificate. Instead of a birth certificate, Obama's campaign posted a certification given to those born abroad. Experts have called even that document an obvious forgery. Obama attended school in Indonesia as Barry Sotoro, when only Indonesian citizens were permitted to attend. Obama's school records list his father as Lolo Sotoro, and Obama's citizenship as Indonesian. Obama traveled to Pakistan in 1981, when it was illegal to enter as a U.S. citizen. 16 lawsuits and 2 cases before the Supreme Court now challenge Obama's citizenship. Fact: our Constitution still matters.
So when I stated that George Bush would be the last American president, this is what I meant. And I kind of get a little flaky with my predictions, you know, and I leave them kind of esoteric. But that's really what I meant when I was saying W would be the last American president, because they want to do away with the Constitution. They want to do away with all of these ideas of nationalism and everything else and form the global elite. They're openly discussing the New World Order now. The Bilderbergers are meeting as we speak and preparing the WTO and IMF for the World Bank, for the world legislation. And they're on the market. They're moving their agenda forward, and we're all left clueless as to what's going down. But they have a plan and agenda, and I seem to be tapped into it. There are a number of people, and 2 specific cases that have gone before the Supreme Court, showing that Barack Obama cannot eligibly be the president. He is not an American citizen.
Tonight's guest is a lifelong Democrat Party activist whose resume includes being Deputy Attorney General from Pennsylvania and running as the party's candidate for governor and senator also in Pennsylvania. This die-hard Clintonite has filed a lawsuit that may change the course of history. No, he's not suing the Bush administration. He's suing his own party and its candidate for president, Barack Hussein Obama, not to mention the Federal Election Commission. His charge: Obama is constitutionally ineligible to run for and hold the office of President of the United States of America.
Okay. I have White House press releases. I mean, this has been news. This has been... So now they have created this cult of personality, selling them off to the children. I think that Spider-Man episode was going for $500 on its first day of release. And they have sold him off as this, hero, this savior. And when you realize the type of fanaticism that's following this man, if they were to come out and say that he was not...
So it started. The screams have begun.
...eligible to be president, then what's going to happen? We're going to have race riots. We're going to have people up in arms. And people are going to demand that they have a constitutional convention. They're going to demand that they rewrite these laws. Well, who is behind the rewriting of these laws? If you start to look into who's putting forth the non-natural born citizen acts into Congress, it's Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and another gentleman I can't think of. So this is right after Obama is elected.
I'm not trying to call it. I'm not going to say it again. This is freedom of speech. That's his First Amendment rights, sir. Whoa. All right. Watch it. Get this on tape. Speak to the camera.
I'm just trying. I'm going this way. I'm going this way.
Whoa.
Listen. I'm going away.
Whoa.
So this is what we're looking at. This could be you if you decided you didn't like Obama. And everybody's going to stand behind cheering as they taser you, and you're screaming, "Don't taser me, bro!" And this could lead to some serious trouble. This is if you follow Hitler's guidelines. If you follow the story of the Reichstag leading into Hitler, everybody loved Hitler. And we're watching as a story begins to unfold, but we have clues from history that have allowed us to see through things. And of course we find that they play the same games over and over again. So how far off is this from the Hitler Youth?
We're gonna spread happiness. We're gonna spread freedom.
My favorite part about this is their shirts.
Obama's gonna change it.
Imagine
Obama's gonna lead 'em. We're gonna change it and rearrange it.
I can show you a Hitler film identical to
We're
this one.
gonna change the world.
Everybody say indoctrination, propaganda. Okay, I won't put you through all that. Alright? But, we're talking about the Hitler Youth here. We're really, how far is it from this picture to this picture? Really? Alright? And if you're wondering, I posted this picture on MySpace. I got myspace.com's Freeman TV. If you want, I got all my videos, everything that you want to see on there, all my pictures, artwork, and stuff. And I put this one up there. Now let me tell you, I've got Anna Nicole naked with Marilyn Monroe's body up on my MySpace. I've got the Twin Towers burning. I've got sex, violence, whatever you want. It's all artistically done. But I put this one up. And they sent me a notice. We had to yank that. And they yanked it within 5 minutes. And they told me, you can't have sex or violence on your website. I'm like, well, I do. That wasn't. It was yanked within 5 minutes. Just to let you know, Rupert Murdoch doesn't like Nazi artwork. But when you start to look into symbolism and you start to understand the different symbolic gestures, then you realize that the symbolism of the Nazis, this canted swastika, the swastika is a symbol of the sun, right? That was what it was meant to be. And then when they canted it, that's a symbol within their rituals, and that's it's based on Pythagorean theorem, and it's all in my corporate logo stuff. So, but the symbols of Obama and the swastika are identical in meaning. It's the rising sun. And that's what all of this has been, and that's when I was telling you Bill Clinton said it is a rising sun. This is an agenda of a religion that we don't understand. And we don't realize that our leaders are members of this religion. And yet they established House Resolution 33, which was Freemason Day. And this is the Mason Temple in Los Angeles. And it's huge. It's absolutely huge. And no windows, never windows. And they're doing all their dark rituals behind these things. And they worship the St. John's. And so therefore, House Resolution 33 has now stated Freemasonry Day is June 24th, which is St. John's Day. So this June 24th, they will actually be celebrating Freemasonry Day for the first time. The Freemasons are very proud to tell you how they've controlled civilization from the ancient past of Babylon all the way up to California. They have no problems telling you all about that. And they come from this strange man. Once you go into the rituals of Freemasonry, you become this man Hiram Abiff. And you go through the ritual holding on to the Masonic secret while they pummel you and kill you, and then roll you up in a carpet, stick you in the corner, and do rituals around you until they're ready to resurrect you. And when they do resurrect you, they pull you forward and say, look at this pentagram, this is Venus, and Venus is Lucifer. So you're immediately awoken to the light of Lucifer. Hiram Abiff is a strange character that, there is a Hiram that joins King Hiram of Tyre in the Bible to bring about, to build King Solomon's temple, to house the Ark of the Covenant. King Hiram of Tyre, according to Zechariah Sitchin, left the planet and returned. And when he did return, he had this strange new man known as the first master mason of Freemasonry. And he taught them how to build a house that would house the Ark of the Covenant, which was really a weapon of mass destruction given to the Hebrew bloodline.
Wasn't
If you take the Ark of the Covenant and you break it right into Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, that's what they would do. They would take this thing out and they would unwrap all the cloaks and hides off of it and send it out there, and it'd kill all the armies in front of them. That's what the Ark of the Covenant did. Well, so, the Temple Mount and the Solomon's Temple of the Templars, once you realize that the Templars went to Solomon's Temple and then all of a sudden they were the richest people in the world, there's something to this. There's something secret within all of this, and the fact that the Ark of the Covenant is a perfect electromagnetic conductor that they put some strange stones in and then was able to eradicate armies with, and then they had to call on an alien to bring about a building that might be able to house it, and they electroplated all the walls with gold and left one bloodline, the Levites, in charge of guarding this thing. And then it spoke to people through this power known as the Shekinah, which was the message of God, the Spirit of God that surrounded the Ark of the Covenant. So when we went in and stormed Baghdad, and they called it the Shock and Awe campaign, that was a play on the word Shekinah, because the Freemasons know all about the Shekinah. It's part of their ritual. And the Shekinah, the shock and awe, came down and struck Saddam Hussein, who was claiming to be Nebuchadnezzar reincarnated. I don't know if you saw that headline, but it said CIA cannot disprove Saddam's claims to be Nebuchadnezzar reincarnated. It's all in the newspaper. Everything I say is in the newspaper. Yeah. And he's rebuilding Nebuchadnezzar's palace with masonry with his name all over it, saying that he is Nebuchadnezzar reincarnated. The shock and awe is the same as the Shekinah. The shock and awe comes down and strikes Nebuchadnezzar, Saddam Hussein, using the mother of all bombs that they had just created, this new ultimate weapon that was just below a nuke. And it just happens that they call the mother of all bombs the Moab in military acronyms. Well, the Moabites are the ones that took out Nebuchadnezzar. So you got Saddam Hussein, you got this shock and awe coming in taking Nebuchadnezzar using the Moabs. It happened to begin on the vernal equinox and end on Walpurgis night. Barack Obama, a.k.a. Barry Soetoro, a.k.a. Barry Dunham, the name Barack Obama, we're looking at a serious name game going on because we're looking at Barack Hussein Obama. Okay, Barack's in charge of Israel, and Hussein, the Muslim world. So we've got this split bipolarity going on, and I've been detecting this going out through the whole election. So we had man against woman. We had him who's black and white. We have his name, Barack Hussein, and then he invites Israel, Ram Emanuel Israel, Ram Israel, to be his in his administration. So we have all of these plays on his name. Well, Barak means blessed in Swahili or Arabic. But in Hebrew, Barak means lightning. And so if you were to read the Bible, it would say, and Satan fell like Barak. If you read the line that says, and Satan fell like lightning. The original Hebrew word is Barak. So it would say, and he fell like Barak. But another story is that Muhammad's horse that he's to return on, the pale horse, is also named Barak. And so there's a bit of a name game going on with that, and the pale horse might be Barak. That's the name of Muhammad's horse. And in this dichotomy, this man, Albert Pike, who's standing right next to George Washington on this temple, is a war criminal who is reputed to have started the Ku Klux Klan and is a pretty evil magician. And he is the one who outlined and written all of the rituals for the higher Scottish Rite Freemasonry. So the degrees that go up above 3 were written by this man, Albert Pike. Well, he read a letter to another Freemason known as Mazzini, who is the M in Mafia, and he told them how they were going to establish World War III. And he had also outlined World War I and World War II. But you're going to see that he was saying, okay, we've got to get these polarities going. So first thing we got to do is get the Muslims and the Zionists fighting. So what's going on? You know, we got the Zionists and the Muslims. And so what they were saying is, you know, we got to get the Christians and the atheists fighting each other to kill each other off. And he goes on to state that without knowing where to render its adoration, the people will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. So this is truly their religion, is the religion of Lucifer, and it's the religion of manipulating life. It's the religion of being in charge, in power. All the things that I've given you as examples, the 9/11, the use of a dollar, all of these things take away the divine power in life. And I'm hoping to reestablish that divine right. Because what I have discovered, and what happened was, as Obama was inaugurated, they had the first gay Episcopal cardinal, or Gene Robinson, give his prayer at the One World Conference, and the day before the inauguration, and he opened his prayer to the God of many understandings, because nobody was allowed to use the name of Jesus in Barack's campaign, because the atheists were suing him. Right? So they're fomenting war on every battle that they can. They're planting gardens at the White House while establishing House Resolution 875 to say you can't have an organic garden. Yeah. They're trying to piss you off. They're making you broke and poor while they're throwing $1 million parties at the White House. Obama made $600 million on his campaign and book sales, and then he gave 25 DVDs to Gordon Brown as a present. You know, they're trying to piss people off. That's their whole goal. That's what the Obamas are here to do, is to make you fight against each other. The other prayers that they had, the next one was to the God of many understandings, and then the Lord of all nations, by Rick Warren, and then he even ended that with Amen, and we'll get to why he was worshiping Amen. So Barack talks much about his religion, which he doesn't seem to really have much of one if you look at it from a traditional standpoint, but it was very curious when he made this remark.
What I was suggesting, you are absolutely right that John McCain has not talked about my Muslim faith, and you're absolutely right that that has not
Christian
come... my Christian faith.
Yeah, whatever. So many people think that he might be the Antichrist, and so some have used the typical techniques of trying to understand Satanism in reverse speech. Reverse speech is one of Satan's favorite tools. I'm going to jump that ahead a little bit.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Ask you Satan. 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 Ask you Satan.
That's what you get when you play Yes We Can backwards. Thank you, Satan. Yes, we can. Thank you, Satan. Yes, we can. But I don't go that route. Okay, I believe that the Bible is kind of a script that they're following. I think an Armageddon type of scenario that they're outlining and setting up and following, and it's actually maybe extraterrestrial in origin. And I guess you're going to have to get to my DVDs to get to more of the extraterrestrial connections, because I'm going to try and get this done here. Okay, so the questions of Obama's bloodline and who he is, distant relations to Bush, right? Well, they also found that the bloodline runs through a number of other families, which are very curious. I found it very curious that we have never gotten rid of the aristocracy. We like to believe that we have, that we're electing people into office, and that celebrities are just there because they're really good at what they do. But when you start to track bloodlines and understand who these people are, and that they are basically Egyptian revived, if you realize that we're just in another Egyptian culture, and that these people keep their bloodlines intact, and this is why they have sex with their sisters and mothers and daughters, and they have to keep a genetic bloodline. And I sometimes wonder if that's what I have. Is this what channeled this information for me? Because, like, you know, I'm doing this at 10 not knowing what it means, but all of a sudden, 20 years later, I find out what it all means, and it all has to do with what my dad's doing. So I believe in genetic memory. Genetic memory is a scientifically proven fact. So if we realize that these guys are trying to keep a particular memory together and interbreed so that this memory is passed down, then you start to realize, because, I mean, what are the odds that Hillary is related to Angelina Jolie and Obama's related to Brad Pitt? Right? McCain's related to Britney Spears and George Bush is related to Marilyn Monroe. And they're all related to Vlad the Impaler. But they introduce other bloodlines into there every now and again. If they feel they need a little bit more matricing. Oh, and Hillary's also related to Madonna. Madonna and Angelina Jolie. And Celine Dion, who was happened to be with the hologram representation of Elvis on American Idol.
Boy.
She
does look like
She
that.
has his eyes. I never realized that.
Pauline Pierce, her mother, went off to France with this old man to have a sexual ritual, which the OTO do. No one knows for sure if she came back pregnant or got pregnant afterwards, but she came back and gave birth to little Barbara right after her reunion with Aleister Crowley.
Yeah.
And so this man actually is the son of a beast, or the grandson of a beast, being that he was known as the beast.
Most evil man in the world.
He was known as the most evil man in the world, yeah. Okay, so I've been tracking all these type of symbolic gestures and everything that's going on, and I realized that, like, when W went to visit the Pope, they visited in St. John's Tower on 10/13, or Friday the 13th, which is the 10/13 that the Templars were killed. That's why Friday the 13th is the most unlucky day. George W. Bush goes visit the Pope, and he takes him to St. John's Tower, which is in honor of the Templars in 10/13, and they do it on Friday the 13th. And this has never happened before. They don't bring guests to St. John's Tower.
What's his hand signal he's doing?
Yeah, isn't that funny? He's a UT fan. Yeah. Okay, well, let's keep it straight that Pope Ratzinger, who took on Pope Benedict, which is the name of the title of the guy who was in charge of the Templars, and also the Pope that was in charge during World War I. They choose these names very carefully. Benedict is Benedict's rule, which is the rule that created the Templars. And he has now established that the Templars are okay. We didn't find any problem. We actually misread all the transcripts and all those things we said about them kissing people on the anus and pissing on the cross and all that. Forget about it. We exonerate the Templars completely. It was found out that Mr. Hitler Youth from Bavaria, where the Illuminati was formed, was investigating in the Illuminati and the Templars long before they came out and said, we found this mysterious document that exonerates the Templars. So according to the Vatican, the Templars are okay again. No worries there. So who is this man we call the president? I'm doing a story on space-based weaponry and the coupling of DoD with NASA. This is how I started my Obama investigation. And I'm trying to understand how this fits into Werner von Braun's predictions. And so what this is an X-band radar. This is a radar that was on an oil rig that was shipped out of Texas just a day before Katrina hit. Everybody forgot about the X-band radar after that. What the X-band radar does is it scans the system for barium. It can detect barium in any system. It can track barium all over the planet. And then we have the HARP facility over here. And the HARP is an antenna array in Gacona, Alaska, which I have a film about. You can watch on my website. You can get it here at the bookstore. HARP is an antenna array that shoots ultra-low frequency waves into the ionosphere, and with that they can manipulate different frequency modulations, causing earthquakes, causing floods. As a matter of fact, the USA Today reported, Milosevic accuses U.S. of using HARP technologies to cause earthquakes and floods in the Middle East. Yeah. Front page of the USA Today. My problem is that they don't database the USA Today. So because I did not collect and hold all those papers from 1999 and 90s, I don't have the evidence to show you. Nobody databases the USA Today. But they've given all these Masonic clues and secret symbols, and I tell you straight out that Milosevic was accusing U.S. of using this technology to cause earthquakes and floods. And so what is happening is we're all being chemtrailed, right? We all know this, right? We see the grid pattern, but what is it for? Well, two of the main ingredients within the chemtrails is aluminum and barium. So one is so that you're tracked by the X-band radar, which left out of here just before Katrina, went all the way around Central America to set up next to the HARP facility in Alaska, where Governor Palin is, right? And then, of course, the HARP facility runs on a radio frequency waves, using ultra-low radio frequency waves. So the aluminum in your system has now made you a perfect antenna. So now you are a perfect component for these two systems to work against you. All of this was put together and is now housed in Cheyenne Mountain, which is the home of the Missile Defensive Shield. And when they announced that they were moving the Missile Defensive Shield to Cheyenne Mountain, which if any of you are familiar with Stargate, that is Space Command. That is Cheyenne Mountain where the Missile Defensive Shield was put. That's Colorado Springs. As soon as they announced that the Cheyenne Mountain Missile Defensive Shield would be put in Cheyenne Mountain, a rocket burnt throughout our atmosphere, and I watched this as it happened. And it miraculously was heading to a missile silo at the time. I have a friend with a $2 million home in a missile silo, and this big burning apparatus just looked like the Empire State Building burning across the atmosphere came across. I thought we were under attack, because building a missile defensive shield, a HARP facility, a force field. We now have a force field. This is against the SALT II treaty. This is against the Strategic Arms Limitation Mutual Destruction. This is saying, okay, now we got a force field, we can launch, and you can't launch back. Because HARP can shut off all electronics, and so we do have a missile defensive shield. But all of this starts to sound a bit like a sci-fi story. But how close are these sci-fi stories to reality? Can we call this predictive programming? I just have you notice that these are the SG-1 characters. This is the Obama administration. Can you tell me the difference? Okay? Yeah, we got
Oh my God.
we got Biden, who fits in the Obama bin Biden story there. And we've got Bernanke, the guy who forced them to sign the 1013 document. Right? We've got the governor of Alaska, who's in charge of the HARP facility. And, of course, the Secretary of State, who's trying to push for UFO disclosure. And we've got our nemesis, who in the Stargate trilogy or Stargate story of Stargate Atlantis is known as Apophis. Okay? So, how close is this to reality? Apophis is the ancient Egyptian Satan. He is the serpent dark lord that tries to eat raw every night. He is the great lord of evil. He is Satan. He's the original Satan because Akhenaten created the original monotheism. So you have the cult of Aten, which is the sun god, the one and true god. If you watch Battlestar Galactica, that's the Cylon's god. And then you've got the adversary, the satanic force, which he calls Apophis. Well, it was originally Apep in Egypt, but in Greek it's Apophis, which is the character in Stargate 1. This was all begun by Akhenaten. He began this first monotheistic religion. So now I've got Obama connected to Apophis, and I'm looking at a space war coming. I'm watching as I'm telling people they're going to use meteors. They're going to use meteors to bring about the weaponization of space. I was discussing this in January. In March, a meteor almost hit the planet. March 2nd. It was noticed 3 days prior to its possible impact. It did not impact the planet. But just as Werner von Braun had been saying, and just as I had been saying, all of a sudden it was big news. All of a sudden we needed to come up with an agenda, an idea of a way to combat the coming problem. So there is a Space Command, there is a United States Space Force. They have been in existence for a long, long time. You can find space battle labs and all of this as they're getting ready for the weaponization of space. Okay, so we have this asteroid come in, and they say, oh, well, now we got to deal with this threat. We've got a big problem. We're having an issue, and we need to deal with it. And there are now two fighting factions on determining how to stop Apophis from hitting planet Earth. So as I'm tracking asteroids, and I'm tracking Obama and the coupling of the space-based weaponry and the use of asteroids to further the weaponization of space, and all of a sudden they announce, well, we have this big problem we're going to couple with the Russia-China Space Force to conquer Apophis, which just happened to be Akhenaten's Satan. the spirit of evil and destruction. And it came from a group of asteroids known as the A10.
So that means we're not going to all die in 2012 because they have to save us so we can die.
Yeah, in 2019. Actually, or 2029 is when it comes, and it will arrive on Friday the 13th, 2029. And so right now they're getting ready, and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do about Apophis and how they're going to coordinate the efforts of the world to save us from this coming threat. And so Jet Propulsion Laboratories is saying, well, we need to nuke it. We need to nuke it. And the other astronauts in the ASC, this Astronomical Society, they're saying, no, we have technology that can nudge that thing out of the way. There's no need to nuke it. And they're all going, you're crazy. We need to nuke it. We need to get weapons in space. So in trying to understand the Obama's bloodline, I was trying to put this piece together, and there were some weird symbolic gestures. Now, the Queen came up and put her arm around Michelle Obama during the G20 meeting when they met at the palace. This has never happened before. The Queen does not touch people, and nobody touches the Queen. They're God. You're not allowed to touch them. But the Queen initiated the contact. She put her arm around Michelle. Well, this seemed to fall right into my theories, because as I began to look into this study, let's take this slow for a second. All right, stop. Let's consider this for a minute.
Great music.
Thank you. That's a friend of mine that does that. I have known all my life that there was more on planet Earth, that there was more going on, that there were ancient civilizations such as Atlantis and Lemuria that only the Freemasons write about. If you want to find out about Atlantis or Lemuria, you got to go to a Freemasonic author. You're just not going to find any information, because this is their history, this is their religion, this is why they are so interested in a man writing about fish people from Sirius. The Masons... Well, when you understand the ancient civilization and the height of the technological advancements that they had, then you'll find out that mummification has some strange property that we have not been able to reproduce. Mummification saves a viable cell for cloning. And all my life, all my days, I knew this because I studied ancient astronauts and I believe in these ancient high technologies. And I knew there was something mysterious, and even Time Warner told me that they could clone mummies. Sure enough, they did. In 1985, a mummy was cloned. All right. So the fact that we can clone that mummies can be cloned, but at the same time, when we try to clone or try to mummify, our mummies rot. We don't know the technology of the ancient Egyptians. We don't understand how it's possible to clone a mummy or to make a mummy. So Lenin is rotting right now in the square, and they're having a big hoopla as to whether or not to actually bury him because he's an icon of Russia. So that's going on right as we speak, and they're trying to decide whether or not to bury him. It is entirely possible that you can clone a mummy, and this particular bloodline of mummy seems to be very interesting and intriguing. Once you realize, okay, so the titles that the Secret Service gave the first family, renegade, okay, the definition of renegade, to turn on your people, to turn on your friends, to be an apostate, to be a backstabber. This is what renegade is, the definition. Then we find Michelle Obama. Now, look at this. Okay, I did not manipulate that photo one bit. That is her high school image. This is the same woman, Queen T, that I'm discussing. And so I'm going to leave you with the concept that perhaps our leaders have cloned this ancient bloodline of mummies, of pharaonic bloodline, and brought them back to life as our first family.